Bruce, you must have something really good too.
Of course I do. It's Bruce Danielson, and I guess I'm here to entertain you too.
Yes.
It is now 10:31 Central Time in Sioux Falls. My name is Jack Marsh. I'm the chairman of the Sioux Falls Board of Ethics. I'd like to call to order this special meeting. Would the clerk please read the roll?
Jeff Podolsky.
Here.
Wanda Harris. Here. Jack Marsh.
Here.
Sue Roust. Here. And Greg LaFallen is absent today.
The agenda for today's meeting was distributed and posted on the city's website in advance, and copies of it are available to the public attending here in the room. The first order of business is approval of the minutes from the March 28th meeting, and included with that is the advisory opinion 19-1, which was drafted by the city attorney's office and which I have approved and signed on behalf of the board. So that is included for your information as part of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the March 28th meeting?
Second.
Moved by Jeff, seconded by Sue. Any changes or corrections to the minutes? All in favor of acceptance, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Approved. Next item is business or pending issues to be brought before this board. Councilor Stehly has asked for an advisory opinion from this group, which we are now calling Advisory Opinion 19-2, under the provisions that established this board in 1992. Members of the council, other city officials who are elected and appointed can come before this body and ask for advisory opinions. And unless we believe it's a frivolous matter, we take them up. So if there is no objection from any member of the board, we will accept the request from Councilor Stehly and proceed. Any objections to accepting her request for an advisory opinion? Hearing none, we'll proceed, and Councilor Stehly is in the room and is ready to offer some testimony. But before we swear you in, Councilor Stehly, I just wanted to read for the record your request for an advisory opinion. The City Council received an invitation to an event hosted by Sioux Steel and Roy Companies to discuss architecture ideas for the downtown Sioux Steel redevelopment site. The invitation mentions that heavy appetizers and drinks will follow the presentation. The developer and/or property owner are anticipated to apply for a TIF as part of the Sioux Steel redevelopment that would require City Council approval. I am requesting that the Board of Ethics issue an advisory opinion as to whether a council member may consume free food or drink from an individual or private entity requesting or expected to request council action that benefits them. So, Carrie, as clerk, would you swear in our witness, Theresa Stehly, please?
Do you solemnly affirm that the evidence you shall give relative to this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under the penalties of perjury? I do.
Councilor Stehly, we thank you for appearing with us, before us, and we thank you for bringing this matter to us, for us to weigh in on whether or not we see this as appropriate or not. I would give you the opportunity now to elaborate on this matter, explain a little bit more about the event and the City Council's potential participation in the event.
Well, and I want to say thank you for bringing this together on a short term. Our City Attorney, Stacey Koistra, was very accommodating in that. And I was just wondering if, do you have a copy of the Board of Ethics, Siouxland Library's opinion? Just, if we, under A, it says, no officer or employee shall directly or indirectly solicit any gift or accept any gift, whether in the form of money, services, loan, travel, entertainment, hospitality, thing or promise of any other form, under circumstances in which it could reasonably be inferred, that the gift was intended to influence or could reasonably be expected to influence the officer or employee in the performance of official duties or was intended as a reward for any official action. So, first of all, before we move forward, I do want to clarify that I got a phone call from Lloyd Company Executive Jake Kwanzi yesterday, and I just want to clarify that he made it clear that the Lloyd Companies was not encouraging this event. However, they are partnering with Sioux Steel, so they're both going together, but Lloyd, so the Sioux Steel part of it, they're partners in moving forward.
Okay,
So-
Councilor Stehly, can you clarify for us, what is this event, what's going to be covered, who's invited?
Okay, so the event is it's going to be and I got that, you see the invitation there. So we received this beautiful invitation, People Build Skyline. So this is concerning the Sioux Steel property. They had a big announcement that they're partnering with the Lloyd Company to develop this area along the east bank of the river. And I think it's great, I like it. I was told by Lloyd Company that in the partnering aspect, there's probably going to be, they're going to ask us for a TIF. They're going to come before us and I was told could be a $24 million TIF on the whole property. So they're partnering with Sioux Steel, Lloyd Company and Sioux Steel. So,
sorry, who told you?
Jake Kwanzi.
Okay.
Yeah, the same guy the same fellow I talked with yesterday. So he was their representative. And he was meeting with all of us. I think he was trying to reach out to all the council members before they had their press release saying we're joining together with Sioux Steel, Lloyd Companies to do this big convention center, office complex, possibly. I think they're going to have some apartment living along their property.
Is this can you clarify for us, who is organizing this? Who is making a presentation?
Sioux Steel.
And is this exclusive to City Council? Or
I think it might be open to the public. I don't know. I just got the invitation personally addressed. We each got, on the council got an invitation. So it's been, I don't even know if it's noticed. It was supposed to happen, do you know, Stacy, when the date was? It was supposed to happen when we had a snow day. It was a few weeks ago. And then I had wanted to ask you about this, and then the timeline was so short, I couldn't, and then it got postponed until next week. So,
But we don't know if this is a briefing exclusive to City Council?
no, it may be open to the public. I didn't, all I got was the invitation, so I'm going on that.
Okay.
Was it addressed to you personally?
Yes.
Okay.
And each of us counselors got one. And then inside it said, your presence is requested, and you have a copy of this on your sheet there. And it was April 11th was the first, that was the snow day, and then it got rescheduled. Architectural ideas and presentations held at the receiving building with Sioux Steel Company, and at 5 o'clock, heavy appetizers and drinks at the market. So this is to talk to us about the project that had been unveiled.
Okay, based on this invitation, there are two separate events. At two separate locations. At 4 o'clock is the presentation,
And then they get
at
together.
5 o'clock there's an invitation for heavy appetizers and drinks at the market, which
Yes.
is near that same property.
Yes. To me, I mean, it was the same energy. It's all in the same invitation.
Okay.
So if I can just,
Go ahead.
so I got that and I thought to myself, knowing human nature as it is, anytime if you're invited into a group of people and you're having heavy appetizers and drinks and you're talking about something, I can see where that could add a little weight to the issue, especially, I mean, we're going to be voting on giving them a TIF, possibly. So to me, my inclination was, I don't know that this is something, I wouldn't mind going and hearing the presentation, but partnering it with the drink and appetizer thing was problematic for me. And I want to draw some comparisons. because we've had lots of issues that have been somewhat contentious with neighbors come before us. For example, the Lifescape issue, they wanted us to vacate their street. If the CEO, Rick DeSanto of Lifescape, had reached out to me and said, Theresa, let's meet at Minimis for heavy hors d'oeuvres and drinks while I talk to you about, why I'd like you to vacate, or we want this street vacated, I'd have a problem with that. And I think the neighbors in that area would be concerned as well. I did meet with the Lifescape people. I went in, looked at what they had, and I left. But there were no drinks, and there were no appetizers involved. If Mark Mickelson, who wanted us to rezone the property by Oscar House School, the Keene Park area, and very contentious, it did pass, but he wanted to put these apartments in, the neighbors were totally opposed. If Mark had said, Theresa, let's meet at Minimis, I want to tell you about the project, and we're going to have I'll buy you some more hors d'oeuvres and have some drinks, I don't think the neighbors would have been real happy about that. Same thing, the Costello Company, Brett and 85th, they wanted us to rezone this area for multi-use apartments. There were residential homes there. It was contentious. I did meet with the Costello Company. They wanted to talk to me. We went out to Kalani's for lunch. I bought my own lunch. Now maybe in this instance, we say, well, you're going to meet for heavy hors d'oeuvres and drinks, and you buy your own drinks, and you're not treated to that. But I try to keep, when I'm going to be voting on something that has an impact, I don't accept food and drinks from those people. And the neighbors, again, I think the community would not be happy if they thought that kind of little lobbying effort was happening. So I just thought this, to me, seemed a little problematic. I wanted to throw it out there, and I'm sure the council would be happy to know what direction you were going to weigh in on that as well.
So let's open the floor to questions from individual members of the board. We'll allow other testimony a little later in the proceeding.
So how often does this happen, where council members are invited to events, informational events, etc.? You mentioned a few private meetings maybe, but are you get invited to events like this? And again,
this is the first time I've ever been invited to an event to talk about a proposed development like this. Yes, like when we had the Cascades, that's the Lloyd Company on North Phillips. They wanted a TIF. I met with Erica Beck and this same Jake guy who called me. He was from Lloyd, Jake Kwanzi. We met at Marlin's, and they showed me their plans. I had a cup of coffee. I don't even know that. I think I paid for my own coffee at that time. So we met. They showed it to me, very businesslike, and they did their proposal, or they said, we want this. We are hoping for a TIF. They gave us the information. So that, to me, that was acceptable. Are we invited places like chamber mixers? Yes, but they're not coming to us with a request, right? It's not tied to a project. So yeah, we do go to different things, and we go to neighborhood picnics, but it's a little different because this is going to be, I know they're going to be coming up and wanting, they told me they're going to ask for a TIF for this project. So it just concerned me that way in this instance.
Councilor Stehly, was that Jake Kwanzi who told you they were going to ask for a TIF?
Yes.
Do you know the time frame for the project? Do you know when, so this looks preliminary, do you know when they're going to start?
I don't have the exact dates, but I know that they had a big press conference, and they had Sue Steele and Lloyd Company together. This would have been back in the beginning, I think, maybe end of March. It was in the media.
I guess my question is given the timeframes of the project, I know that it's expected they're going to ask for a TIF. When do you think that request might be made? If you know.
I don't know, but I think that apparently things are moving ahead, because they wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't. So
Okay. You said that each of the council members got an invitation. You're not aware that anyone on the council, including you, had asked either Lloyd or Sue Stehly to send you this invitation?
Oh, I know,
Okay.
no.
It was just sent
No,
to you?
I
It was-
don't, and the council members I visited with didn't have, they just got the invitation and they thought it was pretty cool. I mean, it's pretty special, but it's about their project to have this huge development there, which I'm not, this isn't supposed to be any kind of a comment on the validity of this, but it's just that I know that there's a TIF tied to it. And I believe the Argus reported that as well. Maybe I should have brought the Argus report with me. But it was in the media.
And you mentioned earlier that you didn't know if the general public was invited when you talked with Jake Quanzi. Did you ever ask kind of who was on the invite list?
No, I did not. Just because we were personally invited, so.
Do you think that the invite list is much broader than just the city council?
I think it could be.
I don't.
And I don't know if it's open to the general public. I'm not sure how that was advertised.
I can guess at this, but do you have any idea what heavy appetizers means?
No, I don't, but I'm thinking it's not, to me, this is pretty classy. So I'm thinking hearty, does it say heavy or hearty?
Heavy. I believe.
Heavy, yeah, I think could be like a meal.
I'm planning an event at a different hotel in town right now where we're serving heavy appetizers, and I can tell you the cost per person is $26. And I'm sure it's very similar to this, and then brings extra, of course.
Any other questions, Sue?
I have one more.
Go ahead.
Based on maybe your brief discussion with Jake Quanzi or this invitation, I'm guessing that much of the same information will be presented to the council at some point in the future, perhaps?
If they wanted to, absolutely, yes.
Do you have any idea what you might learn at this gathering that would be different from what you might learn later at the council meetings when it's presented?
No.
Councilor Stehly, are you questioning whether it's appropriate to even be at the briefing at 4 o'clock, or only questioning whether or not you and other members of the council should be at the 5 o'clock event, which is held on a separate location?
That's a good point. I guess if it was just the briefing, I wouldn't have a problem with that. Although I do like it when they come officially in front of the council to present, and that's how things have been done in the past. We're given things with the public watching. So my concern is that we don't have any kind of a sense of bringing people in. Sometimes it's harder to vote against something when you've been enveloped in it. But this seemed to be like a package deal to me. So and this isn't just about a message for the council. I think this sends a message to the development community that, these are things that are acceptable, and then there's some things that cross over the line as far as lobbying people. Because I would hate to have us start having that happen within our community. And I'm going to say, when I got elected and Councilor Knightsford and I had this discussion, Lloyd Company was having a lunch, and they invited us to come to this lunch that they had. And I said, I don't think I'm going to go to that, because we didn't have anything, I don't think, in front of us right then. But I thought, there again, if you're giving me food, and we're going to be seeing your projects come to us, how does that tie in? And some people will say, well, that's, that won't bother me, that's not a problem, I'm bigger than that. But again, I bring it back to the neighbor issues. If the neighbors find out we're meeting with somebody about a project and having drinks and having food, then does that mean we need to meet with them and have drinks and food at their house too? Do we treat them the same way, or?
And unless the city attorney wants to sees it a different way. I don't think our role is to determine whether or not this is under the open meetings law, whether or not it's appropriate for the city council to show up and not be a public event. But I don't think that's part of our jurisdiction. Is that correct?
Correct. I mean, we're here today on the issue as posed, and per the agenda, and that's what's been noticed. And so it is the issue regarding the heavy hors d'oeuvres and drinks.
Other questions, and then I would ask Mr. Koistra to address us about what he sees as the relevant ordinances and what in statute might be applicable in this situation.
Jack, can I ask one more question,
Sure.
just to make sure I understand? Councilor Stehly, do you see any difference between going to a gathering like this and getting heavy appetizers and drinks from meeting, and you mentioned a couple instances with someone, a constituent, and letting them buy breakfast for you or coffee or anything like that?
If the constituent is going to talk to me about an issue I'm going to be voting on, then I think that's problematic. I think it's the same thing.
Just want to make sure.
And so in those instances, you indicated that you declined, or you bought your own coffee.
Right.
Yeah.
Mr. Koistra, you want to address the board then on which you have the relevant ordinances or provisions of the city charter?
Absolutely. Ordinance 35.051 is probably the threshold ordinance that it's the construction ordinance for Chapter 35, which is conflicts of interest. And basically what it states is this subchapter, being the conflicts of interest, shall be liberally construed to protect the public interest in full disclosure of conflicts of interest and providing ethical standards of conduct for city council members, including the mayor. So that applies, this chapter applies to this proceeding.
And repeat the reference on what is 35.
0.051. And again, it's entitled
35.051.
Yes. And then if you go down to 35.053, which is the conflicts of interest ordinance itself specifically, and I direct your attention to, first of all, paragraph E, because a factual question was asked as to whether this was a solicited gift or unsolicited. And our understanding is unsolicited, to our knowledge. There aren't any facts to believe that anyone from the council solicited this. So then if you go down to subparagraph 2, 35.053E.
Could you go ahead and read that paragraph E then?
Yes. So it says, city officials shall not directly or indirectly solicit any gift or accept any gift, whether in the form of money, services, loan, travel, entertainment, hospitality, thing or promise, or any other form under circumstances in which it could be reasonably inferred that the gift was intended to influence or could reasonably be expected to influence the officer in the performance of their official duties or was intended as a reward for any official action. And then there are two subparagraphs there. The first doesn't apply. It's regarding political contributions. Legitimate political contributions are not gifts. Under the provisions of this subchapter, that's handled elsewhere. The second one does apply, where it states it is not a conflict of interest for any official to receive a gift or gratuity that is an unsolicited item of nominal intrinsic value. Okay, the relevance there is the unsolicited piece, which I think we've established by facts, and the item of nominal intrinsic value. I think it's accurate to say that the board's prior decisions would fit this into the nominal intrinsic value, and I don't think that's an issue today as to whether it's of such value that it would exceed that standard. So I think the issue before the board primarily right now would be, does the timing nexus play a role in that? And with that, I would direct you to the next ordinance, which is standards of conduct. And paragraphs D and E specifically, which state, city officials shall not take action to, paragraph D states, grant any special consideration, treatment, or advantage to any citizen, individual, business, organization, or group beyond that which is normally available to every other citizen, individual, business, organization, or group, or use their elected position to secure special advantages, privileges, or exemptions for themselves or others. And I think paragraph E is probably the most on point, which is are they, again, while this is unsolicited, attempting to secure special advantages, privileges, or exemptions for themselves? So in this case, I think that the primary issue, based on the request as submitted, is problematic that there's a potential issue, although we don't have a specific time frame, that this will be coming up. Does that somehow take this out of what is basically, by ordinance, an unsolicited nominally valued item? But does that create an issue ethically if that's on the horizon?
Do you agree that there is no problem with the 4 p.m. briefing, or is there an issue we should consider there?
I don't think there's an issue to consider there because it wasn't presented and it wasn't noticed, and it's not an issue that Councilor Stehly really has a question about. I think we're here, and I don't want to misstate what you're saying, about the exchange, I think the perception, again, when you look at the threshold, is there a concern about the heavy hors d'oeuvres and drinks?
Okay.
Can I ask a question, kind of historical perspective? Mr. Cloister, you are saying that we're assuming this is of nominal value. A year or two ago, there was the issue of the gift cards that were going to be given out to law enforcement officers, unsolicited gifts. Were those $25 gift cards?
Well, I think they were $5 if I'm not mistaken, but I would distinguish that case because that's really the only one where there was a difference in the nominal intrinsic value analysis, but that was because of an internal police department policy. It was separate from this ordinance. So that's kind of apples and oranges at this point. So
The policy in that case required them to get something they could consume on the premises.
Okay.
And the other thing I would encourage the board is to not make a decision based on speculation as to the value. We're taking it on its face from the invitation. They're heavy appetizers and drinks, and so I think you could state this is the basis upon which we're making this decision. But again, as the petitioner, as the requester, I don't think the issue is this of such value? It's not a car, it's not a $100 gift card. They're appetizers and drinks, and so I think you can operate based on the body of law. Again, distinguishing the one case that it's under the threshold established by the decisions and opinions.
Okay, I want to allow other members of the audience to provide testimony if they so choose. But before we do that, are there any further questions of Councilor Stehly or of the city attorney?
I have one more question.
Of course.
I realize this is beyond the words of the ordinance, but do you believe, Councilor Stehly, that if you were to attend this appetizer, this separate function after the presentation, that it might have any influence on you in the way you voted on a request for a tip?
Well, I'm not so concerned about myself as I am about my colleagues. And just the group as a whole. And I'm trying to act with integrity in how I interact with situations, especially when we're going to be voting on something. And the same thing, I think this sets a standard for all of us to adhere to. And I would hate to have some of my colleagues going in and I have observed in different times where we might be in a chamber mixer, there's drinks being, you're drinking, you're with these people, we're mingling, you're talking, things get done in those kind of situations. So to me, I don't want that, I don't want any kind of a project going forward. I don't want any of us to have to be subjected, not that that's not even the right word, but I just would like to draw the line that says this isn't acceptable to be commingling this way before we vote. I just don't want any chance that there's any weight given to that particular project. I mean, it's the public, this is about the public's opinion too. There's already questions about integrity and how things are done. There's a feeling that under the surface there's undercurrents of relationships. See, when you have this kind of thing out there, which I mean, then it just creates this attorney, what is that? The appearance of impropriety. Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm trying to make sure that doesn't happen.
Any further questions? And we will ask Councilor Stehly to stand by wish to hear from her again. Any further questions? Okay, thank you. If you come forward, and identify yourself, and then we're going to swear you in as a witness, please.
Bruce Danielson.
Okay. Bruce, we're going to swear you in.
Do you solemnly affirm that the evidence you shall give relative to this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under the penalties of perjury?
Yes, I do.
Mr. Danielson, you may proceed.
I've been here several times. I was here for the police gift card, and those actually range from $10 to $20 a piece. And there was a greeting card similar to this that was given with each gift card. The issue we had just previous, that we have the results here about the librarian receiving the honorarium. There was one word used, or one phrase used by Mr. Laval, and I wish he was here today because I'm sure he would say the same thing. This is a diminutive value. It doesn't matter that it's a $26 lunch, doesn't matter that it's a $5 gift card, it doesn't matter any of it. It's still a diminutive value. And I see this as a problem because we do see, as we go around to these different events, where things are given to people in attendance. We watch staff, we watch city officials, we watch elected officials being given little gifts of different sorts. They all have some kind of a diminutive value. There's one thing when you go and you get a plaque for your service and you're retiring from the service. There are different things that happen in these meetings, and they're being put up onto the dais to thank them for doing something. But usually it's after an event, and there isn't usually a diminutive value that the public is able to witness. On April 23rd, we got the latest update on the meetings that the council publishes. It's in there. There's 2 events. One is the state steel tour and the discussion of it. No problem with that whatsoever. We all should go to see what they want to do, and I think that's wonderful. I think all the city council needs to have that tour. Yesterday I was at the event center meeting that was held out at the convention center, and they were offering to take people on the tour of the ballpark. It's the same type of thing. There's no value to that other than information. Where we have a problem is when we go to these events and the public is often excluded, or the media is excluded from even having the hearty or heavy hors d'oeuvres. You know, we're shoved to the side. The public is shoved to the side because, well, this is for invitation only people to be at these things and do this. That is a diminutive value. If everybody is treated absolutely equally, and there's no follow-up vote that's involved, that's going to set up the priority that because I gave you a $26 lunch, I expect you to vote for my project. We have a problem. Back to Mr. Laval's words. This has a diminutive value. He very clearly stated in those 2 previous discussions that anything like this is a diminutive value. I agree with him wholeheartedly on that. And I believe the public will wholeheartedly agree with him on that. When I read both what Mr. Coyster just said and this opinion that was just handed down, this is a diminutive value, and it would be a conflict of interest. And that's where I'd like to rest. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from Mr. Daniels? All right.
Can I make one more comment?
Yes.
Or unless somebody else, Cheryl, were you going to say?
No.
Did you want to testify? Come on up. You can identify yourself, and then we'll swear you in.
My name is Cheryl Ralph.
Cheryl Ralph.
Ralph, R-A-T-H.
Do you solemnly affirm that the evidence you shall give relative to the matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under the penalties of perjury?
I do.
It's R-A-T-H, you said?
A-T-H. The reason I'm here this morning is, as a citizen, the question I have is when potential tax dollars and a vote are involved, how is this any different from serving food and drink at polling places at election time, which is prohibited? And that's the question I have.
Thank you. So let's open the floor to the board to consider what your feelings are about this matter. I would say the question, assuming conformity to the open meetings law, the question at hand here is whether it's appropriate for members of the city council to attend a separate event at 5 o'clock offering heavy appetizers and drinks in the market. One thing we do not know if this is open to the public or whether this is an exclusive invitation to the council or anybody else. Has not been established. So, we'll go on the floor. Sue?
It seems to me, in some ways, this is a little speculating, but the fact that this is presented as two separate events in two separate locations makes me think that Sioux Falls is trying to make it easy for the council to attend the briefing and then not go to the separate event. It's like they're setting it up so that the council members can easily avoid any appearance of a conflict. It's not even in the same location. I realize it's close by. But, it looks to me like you can't be eating and drinking during the presentation because the food's in a different location. So that would incline me to think that if you attend the briefing but don't go to the 5 o'clock event, you're really not being influenced at all by the potential of any sort of a gift, even if it is Minimis.
Do you have a suggestion for how we should be, what our opinion should be?
I would, if it were me, I would suggest that we see no conflict with the counselors attending the informational presentation, but would advise to avoid an appearance of conflict to not attend the food and drinks event afterwards.
Great.
I think those sentiments are, on point. I agree. You look at the rule though, it's interesting, and you're right, Sue, we're speculating to some extent, but it says that gift could reasonably inferred or was intended to influence, so we don't know that, it's not here, and I doubt they would say they intended to influence, or could reasonably be expected to influence. Would a de minimis heavy appetizer function be expected or reasonably inferred to be expected to influence? Again, we're speculating, but I think overarching the thing is what Sue said, the appearance of impropriety probably has to be the rule that governs on this, and there's someone who will believe that this could, where it presents the appearance of impropriety just by the fact of being there. Setting aside all the open meeting laws, which Stacy can deal with separately, or the council can, that seems to be the right result to have, to avoid the function of the appetizers and go to the presentation.
Well, my thoughts are similar in this specific circumstance. I'm wondering if we're being asked to declare something more broadly, because I heard concerns about council members being invited to many events where they are served food and drink. And so maybe our city attorney or someone could help me understand if this is going to be a narrowly defined decision that we made today relative to this specific event, or if we're talking about food and drink being served by any entity who has a pending matter coming up in front of the council. If that makes sense. Another question.
Great, answer.
Yeah, I do have some thoughts on that. First of all, this would be limited to these facts in the sense that you have to determine, I mean, you mentioned the discussion of whether that appearance of impropriety exists and whether it's appropriate. Like, for example, the question that asked Councilor Stehly, well, do you believe you could go and not be influenced or others? That's a different question than, like on the legal analysis side, for example, factually speaking, everyone's acknowledging this is of nominal intrinsic value, right? So the question before the board is there a nexus? Because if the question, you know, if this is a should they go or not, as opposed to whatever force of law, so to speak, or source of authority that you're creating by this decision, the issue before the board is kind of that timing aspect. And so whether an individual counselor decides whether they should go or not go, you know, you have ethics and you have morals. The morals piece of this is Councilor Stehly, you know, wouldn't go or would go, you know, and think that it's just fine. Ethically speaking, I would encourage the board to think about whatever authority they're establishing here to say, all right, now are we creating, because legally speaking, I have to say there's nothing in the law that says, you know, whether there's a vote next week or next month or next year, if it's of nominal intrinsic value, legally speaking, they're allowed to receive it. Okay? So part of the sort of the unique question that Councilor Stehly is presenting is, what if there's something on the horizon there that I have a duty to advise? It doesn't take it out of the nominally intrinsic value piece. And so, and we also shouldn't stray into, you know, the moral piece of this, you know, that's sort of the decision on individual counselors as far as whether they want to attend something like this. It's sort of, this is still America. This is American thing. They can decide what they want to do. But as the board, as it considers, now there's this new issue that's been presented because there's something on the horizon, does that create an issue that somehow takes it outside of this realm of nominal intrinsic value, recognizing from a pure financial point of view it's not impacted? That's the concern and the question that I think is before the board.
And it's also the appearance of impropriety, though. So you're saying legally, yeah, the value is small and, you know, it's okay, but I think the question is the appearance of impropriety, which is more the ethical issue, not the legal.
Which is why it's not coming out of my office.
Right.
It's coming from all of you.
Right.
It's yeah.
Stacey, can I just press on the nexus question though, the timing of it all? Where do you draw the line? Because, for example, I think Councilor Stehly said there's mixers at the chamber. And I don't remember exactly, and I might be off on this, but doesn't the city fund the chamber to some extent? Don't they provide money? So how, and if they need more and they come back, where do you draw that end line after which it wouldn't matter? Because in some instances, I go to a function, I'm sitting around with appetizers and drinks, I'm talking to a group of people, I happen to be the counselor now, and eventually they may come to the council and ask for a favor. So where you know, this is maybe a little easier because it's right on the horizon, arguably so, but there's a lot of things that could happen, and I would have to be mindful of the fact that I'm going to vote on something that involves the group that's giving me free drinks.
And that's part of what the board, I think, has to wrestle with, because that's the concern that brought this. We don't have that timing, and that's what I would advise the board to be mindful of, is as soon as we create that timing standard, and we don't have that because we don't know, it's not, to my knowledge, it's not on an existing agenda.
Well, right, but could I speak? I mean, so this is different than just getting together at a chamber, because, yeah, there might be something coming up, and we don't actually, we give to like Forward Sioux Falls, we're not giving to the chamber. And that's another thing, because you got Forward Sioux Falls, you got the Development Foundation, Sioux Falls Development Foundation and the chamber. They're together, but they're not. It's a very complicated relationship. So we gave, I think, $2 million to the Development Foundation, I think. So that kind of gets dispersed. So yes, inadvertently that's happening, but this is a whole event that has everything to do with this project. So a project that has been announced. So it's not like they're just saying, come on over, we want to try to get to know you better. This is about an event that they're going to want us to weigh in on, and I believe it's going to be soon. there was an excitement, energy. Now, maybe it's gonna fall through. We've had those things happen. But I would tell you, I had another invite from another developer who wants to develop the north end of that railroad property, and he had us in, and I did take a cup of coffee from this guy, so I'm going to confess to that. But I wouldn't have. It was a hard sell. I mean, he wanted to close the deal when we came together, and that was without any food present. So I mean, these are people who, you know, they're passionate about what they want done, and so. And another example that I'm not asking you to weigh in on, but this has been in my mind, because I'm very aware of what the common person is, what representation they have. Because you do, if you've got development happening and money, you're here, and then a lot of average people are just kind of over here. And every year, we're invited to, I believe it's Woods Fuller, has a big get-together at the pavilion. They have, and we're invited as counselors, and we give them contracts. And they have this huge spread. I've never gone to it because I'm thinking, what about that other little law firm who might want to be getting a contract and they don't have us in for that stuff? And it kind of gives a little weight to, oh, we're dazzled and bedazzled by this, and then this person isn't doing it. So I'm not asking you about that one, because but I'm just saying that this happens all the time. And some of it you can't avoid, but this is absolutely about a project that is, they're not just speculating here, this is a project that is happening, and it's so.
Would any board members wish to advance a motion for consideration?
May I just add a comment? I appreciate your distinction that you're making between this project and some other things. I still wonder if it's quite as simple to draw a line someplace. You know, you mentioned the Woods Fuller get together and they have a contract with the city and provide free hors d'oeuvres. Even if that contract's not up for negotiation for a year, I'm just having a hard time figuring out where to draw a line between something that's imminent or reasonably imminent and something that might most likely occur a year from today. But I appreciate your comment.
Would anyone wish to?
Can I step in on that piece, just to touch on the authority piece of this, because that's, you know, when you think about what you're creating, and this isn't pro or con to the extent that I try to communicate this, it's as soon as you establish when there isn't that timing nexus piece, if it's, you know, and this is where the Board of Ethics gets to decide, okay, we got heavy appetizers and drinks on Monday night, and Tuesday night there's a vote, versus 6 months versus 1 year. That's when you start to think about that part of it, that's the nexus that I'm referring to. Because the law says nominal intrinsic value, period. And so we have to ensure that we're just sort of distinguishing between the law and ethics here. And so, and that's where we can consider the facts for that standard that you're creating, because of course people rely on these and they're published and people can look at them. That's one of the things you have to, I think, be mindful of when if you choose to make a distinction on that timing, but factually speaking, that's.
I think that's what I'm struggling with is we don't have all the specific facts, and we're kind of declaring what the council should or should not do at 5 o'clock, where Councilmember Stehly may decide just it doesn't look good, I'm not going to do it on her own. But if we declare that she or any other member of the council should not do this, then to me we're making a broader statement about all of these things. And there are many of these things. And then how do we discern when it's about a TIF or not about a TIF, or close to a vote or not close to a vote? That's kind of what I'm struggling with here.
I'm at the same spot. I mean, what happens if this meeting, this presentation is held, the hors d'oeuvres are held, and something delays presenting any TIF request to the council for a year? as Wanda said, I mean, we don't have some of the timing. It would be different if maybe they presented it next week or a month. What if a longer period of time goes by? And if we put together an opinion that's narrowly tailored, and we say that, what, imminent? Well, I don't know what imminent means. We say within 3 months, well, okay, what if you have a mixer, you don't go, and the actual request comes in after 3 months? I'm struggling.
But can I say, what if it happens in 1 month? And we've had these council members at this event, and they've been there, and then this comes up, and I'm gonna tell you, that could cause a problem with the public. You know, when they vote in and vote through a TIF, and they've been to this hearty hors d'oeuvre and drink thing, so, I mean, just saying to them, advising you, since this is in the hopper, it'd be better to just play it safe and say, don't go to that part of it.
And that's the what if, you said what if, so.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I knew that if, and then I would feel more confident.
So you would talk about the optics of this, really?
Yeah, but as I'm hearing more discussion of the time part of it, you know, as an example, say what if it comes within a month, you know, so are we saying that if you invite counselors to this and then 6 weeks later you appear before them, we're giving our approval that that's okay, that's not a conflict. So I see that as an issue. One alternative is just to encourage each council member themselves to consider the requirement to avoid the appearance of impropriety and leave it to them to judge.
That's where I'm at, and maybe, you know, is it okay for us to say that, you know, it's obviously separated, so it'd be very easy for someone, and you know, Councilmember Stehly won't go because she feels like it's inappropriate, and others should be encouraged to think about that as well, but I don't know that we have enough to actually make a determination.
Yeah, I mean, if we carry it to its maybe illogical extreme, this sounds ridiculous, but.
It's illogical?
It's illogical extreme, yes. Let's just say that we come down with a ruling that says if anybody has a fund of an event, and within 2 months makes a request to the council for something to vote on it, well, then I'm just going to plan my event accordingly, so I'm not going to come before the council until after the 2 months expires. And in the meantime, do I have to say that in my invitation? By the way, we're going to present this. If we ever make a request to the council, it's not going to happen until 4 months from now.
Yeah.
Kind of deal, because otherwise, as a council member, how will I ever know if it's going to be inappropriate for me to attend based on the opinion we give? To Wanda's point, I mean, the appearance of impropriety seems to be the governing rule here, given the fact that if I take something from someone who then makes a request for a vote, is it going to look bad to the public? And it probably may. I still struggle. I don't know how to draw.
I think it would be easier to make an opinion after something like this happened, and after people went and had the hors d'oeuvres, and then the next day voted on something. Then, you know, we're accused of being unethical, then we could discern whether or not they were at that point. There's so much what if here. That's what.
The only problem with that is, you know, they've asked for advisory opinions
Sure.
to try to keep out of the trouble.
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
Somehow, guys.
Well, and I think if you say that this is okay, this sets it up for Mark Mickelson to invite any of us out. I mean, it kind of, it's a new thing. See, I'm just telling you, I'm here because I've never had this happen before. That this kind of thing is right after I was, Lloyd Company met with me the morning of their press release, their press conference, to say, Theresa, we want to talk to you. We know you don't like TIFs, and you've been opposed to them, and we're just going to tell you we're doing this thing with Sioux Steel. They've picked us as their partner. It showed me the game plan. It's going to be the most elaborate thing you've ever seen on the skyline, and they announced it to the world that afternoon. So, I mean, I'm like, okay, fine, you'll come before us and professionally like you always do, but then we get this. And so, this to me was like a little bit of a, maybe a little extra perk or a little push towards, you know, this is a good thing, let's get on board and come on board. So, I don't know why they had it, I don't know what the purpose of the having, I don't know why that's in there. I don't know why that would be paired up with this. Is it to get to know us better? I wish it had been done in something that had nothing to do with this card, because this is their project.
I think it's difficult to make a decision based on speculation. We don't know the key fact of whether this event is open to the public, who's been invited to it. What we're really doing here is we're speculating on the intentions of the other 7 council members. You stated your intentions, you stated your question of what the other council members might do. I'm a little uncomfortable making any sort of guesses as to what their thoughts are on this and advising them without any input on what perhaps they should be doing.
Stacy, can you remind us, when we give an advisory opinion, the factual basis that we need to move forward with that? In other words, to Sue's point, if we find ourselves speculating on a lot of the facts, what's our opportunity to provide an advisory opinion in that case?
Well, you're bound to the facts as presented. You can't, and this would be an open records issue, because if hypothetically you were saying, all right, we're picking 2 months, or you're issuing a commentary on where that line is on the continuum, right? That's a very different question than this invitation and, the set of facts that you may or may not have. And so that's, and so to your question, you have to render a decision on the facts as presented. And, when you go to court, and you see that sometimes you do not have the facts. But I will caution you to limit it to the facts as opposed to a sweeping declaration that changes policy or has the authority of, for things far outside of what they would call in the law the 4 corners of the question document, with the question presented to you. And I believe that's why Councilor Stehly is here. Is this particular one, bear in mind that people would look at that as a comparable issue, but you can't broaden this beyond the facts that you're dealing with here today, which are these heavy appetizers and drinks at the market at 5 p.m. for this invitation. So,
but we do not know if this is exclusive to the council. We don't know if 200 people are going to be invited, if it's open to the public. Right?
Yeah.
We don't know those things.
Well, the other duty I would have is to advise you to not make a decision based on speculation.
Correct.
I do kind of like what Sue had said about if we could make some statement that it may present an appearance of impropriety if any council member went to the 5 p.m. part. Is that appropriate? Because we're not definitively stating anything, we're kind of acknowledging that, yeah, that might look bad.
Well, there's a big difference in the law between shall and may. And may also mean may not. And so say may or may not, I don't, that's for the board to decide. But again, when it comes to some of the facts that just aren't here, it doesn't make a difference. The lawyers deal in hypotheticals, right? If hypothetically, from a timing point of view, this occurred at 5:30 p.m. on a Tuesday night, where they're handing drinks as they're going into the vote. Well, there's an issue there, right? If it's a year from now, does anybody have any heartburn over something that everyone acknowledges of nominal and should be value? So with this on the horizon, I mean, again, I don't replace. I mean, it's the board's decision in that respect. But if you're saying may, just be mindful as this is reduced to writing. May means may not, may or may not. There's discussion about individual council members and whether they make those decisions or not. Those are the types of things you have to decide. Are you going to render a commentary on, the council as a group or individually? or not. So I'm not, ultimately it's the board's decision, but may is it can be fraught with peril in the world of interpretation once you read it. And I don't know if that makes things better or worse with your question.
But I think in the past we've had opinions along Wanda's point to say we aren't drawing a definitive answer, but we're reminding the council members to conduct themselves in a way to not create the appearance of impropriety. To your point, I mean, whether we use the word may or we just parrot the ordinance, really just reminds them of their obligations anyway.
What you often find when you're in the law, when you deal with things like that, you often, the safe harbor, so to speak, is the language of the law itself, which I think is what you're right.
Board, we find no problem with the 4 o'clock event, assuming that your council is in conformity with
Correct.
open meetings law. And Jeff, are you suggesting that relative to the 5 o'clock, we simply restate what the ordinance says? To be sensitive to the appearance of impropriety as well as an outright determination of conflict of interest?
That's my suggestion. I'm just looking again at the request for the opinion.
Yeah, that I'm requesting advisory opinion as to whether a council member may consume free food or drink from an individual or private entity requesting or expected to request council action that benefits them. Maybe we hone in on that request, which is kind of broad.
The facts before us.
Kind of broad.
There is not a pending matter before City Council. Do you acknowledge that?
Yes.
Right. So we don't have anyone who is currently requested. You have a belief, based on a discussion you had with Jake Kwanzi, that it's expected for them to make a request to the council.
That is right.
But we don't know when.
Does anyone wish to offer a motion or the essence of what the position we want to take? And we'll give it to the city attorney to draft.
Well, one way to think of it, just to offer from a language point of view, if there's not a prohibition, I think you have to decide if there's a prohibition. If there's not a prohibition, in your opinion, then they're allowed to do it. You can decide whether that's an accurate statement or not, but if, as you boil down to the question, may they or may they not, you're going to have to vote on whether they may or may not, or that's at least the request of opinion, is may they. And if it's, so in this case, when you look at the use of the term may, as opposed to shall, if you're not saying you shall not, then are you saying it may, based on the state of the conflict of interest law?
I don't sense that anyone wants to state that there's a prohibition. Is that correct?
Given the facts at hand, that's correct.
Councilor Stehly came to us a few months ago with a question relating to petitions. And our determination was we did not have, we did not have an actual instance to rule on. And this last sentence here really, again, to me is kind of in the speculative category. We are not responding to a specific instance.
Well, this library opinion was a specific, it was an advisory opinion, but it was a specific instance.
So,
Yeah.
so could we rule that there's insufficient information here to reach a determination that it is prohibited?
I think that's where I'm.
Yeah. Well said.
Hey, Councilor Stehly, I want to personally commend you for your sensitivity in this matter. I think the optics are troubling to me. But we do have to rule based on the facts as presented. There is not a pending case, pending matter before council. but your sensitivity to the appearance of impropriety, the appearance of conflict of interest, I commend you for that. But based on the facts in front of us, we don't have sufficient grounds to prohibit it. Is that?
Yeah.
Concur on that?
Yes. To prohibit.
To prohibit council members from accepting heavy hors d'oeuvres and drinks at a separate event following the presentation. We don't know this. It's exclusive to the city council. We don't know if it's a public event. We would be speculating.
Yeah, could we present it in two parts? So, for example, Councilor Stehly asked two things. One, is it they want an opinion on whether a council member can consume free food or drink from an individual requesting, already has happened. And then she says, or expect to request, right? So there's really two parts to this. One is you have a concrete instance in front of you, which you know it's on the agenda, it's going to happen. And there's a mixer with gratuities. The other is just the possibility it could happen in the future. That's the difficult part here. If we had the first instance, I think we might be able to have a factual background to make that opinion. We don't have either, right? Which is what you said. It's hard for us to give advice. And I'm with you. This is troubling. This is a hard one. And I'm glad you brought this up, but I don't know how we craft something tailored to not make a policy decision that's broader than we ever expected it to be.
Legally, this is allowed, right? It's nominal intrinsic value, but the optics of this are potentially troublesome.
Appearance of conflict.
The state of the law is such that it's, you asked about it, it's allowed if everyone's acknowledging it's of nominal intrinsic value. There is no prohibition in the law that says you can't do this because it doesn't address that issue. Into the ethical piece of this, and going to your question as to each, you still have to rely on certain facts that are before you. And so, requesting or expected to request, you don't have the facts as to somebody who's requesting this, because based on the testimony, it's expected to ask. So, I would suggest that that's the issue you have before you, because as soon as you say they're requesting, now you're into the continuum piece of this. Is it the afternoon of the vote? Is it 2 weeks removed? 2 years? Makes a big difference. And so factually speaking, I think we have this invitation, you have the testimony regarding the expectation, but we don't have anybody from Sioux Steel here to testify, yes, we are expecting, or you don't have an agenda with that on there. So,
Just anybody could request anything at any time, you just don't know.
Well, you gave us a suggested wording that I hope Carrie wrote down. Could we have that and then include something, reminding the council of section 34.005A about avoiding the appearance of impropriety, encouraging them, advising them, whatever.
I would caution against it.
Reminding.
Well, I'll tell you that they have a duty to follow that regardless of what's in the opinion. That's every city employee and officer has a duty to follow this regardless. You're welcome to put that in there. Advise can be a loaded term in my world, right?
Is there a better word? Just to say remind them of it, or should we just state, maybe state that that's part of the ordinance?
That could be drafted in, it could be noted.
Well, I would ask you, Mr. question, based on what the discussion you've heard, could you offer us a motion for consideration?
Well, I'm not.
I'm not saying it's your motion, I'm saying, but what would be the proper language? That we're saying, based on the facts presented here and the testimony we've heard, we're not issuing an outright prohibition. But we do remind members of City Council of their obligation to, as cited in section whatever.
What you could write the ethics board, having considered City Ordinance 35.053. Again, the safe harbor for you, I believe, is to answer the specific question posed by Councilor Stehly, which is may or may not. Having considered that, so it's part of the record that this is the ordinance that applies, and then answer the question based on your interpretation of that as an ethical board. Are they or are they not allowed to do that? Because as soon as you stray out of the question posed by Councilor Stehly, you're going to get into
Speculation.
Well, speculation, but also in the fact that you're affecting other people's rights or abilities to act. Now you've acted outside the scope of the question that's posed to you. So it has to be narrowly tailored in the sense that you have to answer the question that's there. That's a safe harbor for everyone in the sense that the only issue that was presented is the only issue that was answered. So that's the language, not unlike the statutory reference I made. It would be the safe harbor is the language of the question, and that's the one that's before you. Sometimes you may get half a dozen questions that you've got to answer. Here you have the one regarding these particular facts, and that's where you're safest as far as ensuring that you've minded the open meetings laws, all the public notice requirements, and provided the requester the response that she's asking for.
So let me attempt to kind of recap that. So, based on the city ordinance, applicable city ordinance, and the facts presented here, that assuming that the city council is in conformance with open meetings laws, that accepting appetizers and drinks at a separate event is not prohibited.
Well, I would say they may or may not, and I would caution you on the assuming language. If there's anything in your decision you want where you're making assumptions.
I think our decision is we don't have enough information to answer the question.
So can I just try this? And
Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
So, focusing on the assumptions and the factual backdrop, the motion would be that move that the committee has insufficient facts to render an advisory opinion on the question presented, or excuse me, on the question of whether council members may consume free food or drink from an individual or private entity requesting or expected to request council action that benefits them. And the reason for that motion is we don't have anyone who has currently requested. We don't have that fact. We have testimony that it's expected, but again, in all due respect, it's speculation on whether that will happen. And so based on the facts, we really can't render an opinion. I do agree that I think we could add the reminder of that rule, the ethical obligation of refraining from any action that might raise the appearance of impropriety.
Could I make just a statement? I would really love it if you could say.
Let's hold that for a moment. That was in the form of a motion. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Open the floor for discussion, and before we let Councilor Stehly speak again, anything that other members of the board would like to say about that? Okay, Councilor Stehly.
If there just could be some mention that since a TIF hasn't been asked for, because since I have TIF in there, right, because I was talking, it says anticipated apply for a TIF as part of the Sioux Still redevelopment. What I'm hearing you say is there's no evidence of a TIF being asked for.
That's correct.
Right, so if that could be included, Can you say that you can't make a recommendation because there's been no evidence that a TIF is even being asked for, right? I mean, because if I brought you evidence that they were asking for a TIF, that would have changed everything. Is that you're saying there's not enough information?
So get to the board whether they want to amend that motion.
My only comment, I understand that the facts you set out in your first paragraph, Councilor Stehly, does raise the anticipated TIF request. The question, though, specifically is a little broader by saying to request council action that benefits them, which would go beyond the TIF. Now, I know that's your factual basis, but the question is much broader than just a TIF. It would be any action requested by the council that could benefit them.
Yeah. The person.
The person.
Yeah.
Further discussion on
Well, and if I could just submit, this is the story from the Argus Leader, April 4th. I'd just like to present this.
I don't think that would be appropriate.
What?
I don't find that, we would not find that appropriate at this point.
Because it says tax, they're expected to have a tax. Here it is.
Jeff's motion used your exact words of your request. He just took that second paragraph. Yeah.
Any further discussion before we vote? We'll ask Jeff to repeat his motion. Any further discussion on the motion? Okay, Jeff, would you have to recap that and realize that we will be a second motion asking the city attorney to craft the exact language based on consensus that we achieve here.
Move that the Board of Ethics has insufficient facts to render an advisory opinion on the question whether a council member may consume free food or drink from an individual or private entity requesting or expected to request council action that benefits them.
And then cite the, and then if we want to cite the ordinance.
I further move that the opinion would remind council members of the obligation to refrain from action that might raise the appearance of impropriety.
Mr. Pressure, does that give you enough guidance?
Yeah.
And do you have any further concerns that we should discuss?
I don't think so, as long as you adhere to the question presented. That's, I think, where you're safe territory.
We're ready to vote? Okay. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. And now it would be a second motion, and I'll read the motion unless somebody else to move it. Move that the board authorize its legal advisor, Stacy Koistra, to draft an advisory opinion consistent with the discussions and motion of the board, and to authorize the board chair to both approve and sign the opinion that's drafted on behalf of the board. Someone move that, please.
So,
A second.
Sue gets the motion, Wanda gets the second. Any discussion on that? All in favor say aye.
aye.
All opposed say nay. Passes unanimously. Again, Councilor Stehly, I want to thank you for bringing this matter to our attention. I think this is again, on a personal basis, I would commend you for bringing it forward. But I think you understand why we could not make the issue of.
Well, and had I had, I'm sorry, I didn't bring enough evidence, I guess.
Yeah.
You know,
All right.
live and learn. But anyway.
Okay.
Thank you for your time. I got a student, I got a teacher, but thank you so much.
All right. This is the point at which any other public input is allowed. And if anyone wants to come forward and offer input, they may.
Bruce Danielson again. I just wanted to say I appreciated this open discussion that we all had about this, because this is an ongoing problem that we're finding as we research more activities in the community and how it is affecting different members of the council and city staff. Because we're expecting to see a great many city staff at this event next week And this is really troubling for all of us, because we have people that are working in these different buildings of the city that will be attending this event, and it'll be a celebration of different sorts, and it's going to be a problem. So what you've just said in your decision is because we didn't have the fact that in that April 4th story, they're planning to come in September to ask for the TIF to move this project forward. Now we have to look at, upon submission of that TIF application to the city, we are going to be looking at all of the photographic evidence, so to speak, of who was there, and we will probably, as a group, be bringing together all of these city officials, including council members, whoever is in attendance at that having the heavy appetizers and drink, bringing them before this body, because now we have a problem, back to what Mr. LaFollette was talking about, with this is a diminutive amount. There is going to be, when they go in and they receive a bill, and we have all of these city officials that are going to be there, and they say, well, there was, 200 people there, 100 of them were city officials of some sort or another. Now we have a diminutive amount that's going to be 100 times $26 or something, whatever that value is. So I just want it to be understood that, you did this when we had the issue here with the police gift cards. That was, when that started, I was like, well, that's not a big deal. But then it became a big deal because all of a sudden, because Mr. LaFollette explained how diminutive works, it made sense. When we had the two librarians here a few weeks ago, I was like, well, that doesn't seem like such a bad deal. And then he once again explained how just the appearance, we didn't even know when the gift card thing came up, how that was all going to work, but it became the appearance. And they hadn't received the gift cards yet. Well, they took the gift cards out supposedly and gave them back to all of the events. Then we found out later how that gift card system worked. And I won't get into that now, but that was really troubling. Then, now we get into what the librarians went through. We thought, this Sioux Falls Foundation, that was a nice jest to be able to put that in for the Sioux Falls Foundation. Well, then we find out, looking deeper into it, you people made the right decision to say, no, that is a problem. That's diminutive. And I want to just stress that we are going to keep using that term because that is what you people sitting here on this body have to constantly be reminded of because of Mr. LaFollette and how he's helped you craft those decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. So, D'Angelo, we can only rule on what's brought before.
I understand that completely.
Any other matters before this board? Is there a motion for adjournment?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. We stand adjourned.